What up, photography gang? It's your boy D with another video. In this video, we're going to talk about the Leica D-Lux 3, shooting with the Leica D-Lux 3 in 2025. So the boring stuff real quick, the D-Lux 3 is a 10 megapixel CCD sensor, a key dimension CCD sensor. It can shoot RAW, it has a small sensor, it's an 8 by 4 millimeter approximately sensor. It is about a 4.7 times crop factor compared to a 35 millimeter focal length or frame. It shoots 16 by 9. That is how you get the full 10 megapixels. If you shoot 3 by 2, you get 7.5 megapixels, and if you shoot 4 by 3, you get 5.5 megapixels, which I just shoot 16 by 9 and then crop the other form factors if I end up seeing that works better for that frame. But you might as well get full use of the 10 megapixel frame, and that way you can crop if you need be in the editing process. It is a zoom lens. The range is 28 millimeters all the way to 112 millimeters, and that's 35 millimeter equivalent. So the carrying experience. So the D-Lux 3 is actually quite enjoyable to carry around and have with you. It is not pocketable, not like front pocket pocketable, but jacket pocketable and very easy to carry. This isn't my exact camera bag that I use for it. I can't find it at the moment, but just slips in here and you can zip it up and then carry it, clip it onto your side and then use it that way. That's how I've been using it, or just putting it in a jacket pocket, and that works pretty simple, pretty easy. So it's not the best summertime camera due to it not being front pocket pocketable compared to this C-Lux. This is the C-Lux 2. You can see that the lens protruding out here is what makes the major difference. If this was not sticking out, then you could slip it in the front pocket just like this. But if you're going out with a little bit more intention and know you want to be out there shooting, it is best to just have a camera bag or a jacket with you. But there's the size comparison to the Lumix LX2. So it's also a Leica D-Lux 8. Kind of get the gist of it. This being a very small sensor, small form factor, it is older, but it is a similar size to the RX100. The Sony RX100, this is the Mark VI. Very, very similar form factor, but this has a 1-inch sensor, and this has a small sensor, but has a CCD sensor, which is important, which we'll talk about more later. So build and design form factor on this camera, it's small, easy to carry around with you, but when shooting, it is pretty nerve-wracking to just shoot with, because I feel like it's just going to slip out of my hand. So obviously you have wrist straps, but I always like to add finger straps and then a lot of grip. I add a little bit of grip right now just to the top, And then I normally have like a grip here, but I kind of move them around between cameras. And then I add grip towards the back here so that I can feel a little bit more comfortable holding it one-handed when shooting. They're compact, easy to carry, but also should be easy to shoot one-handed. So it kind of defeats the purpose if it's like slipping out of my hand and I have to use my other hand to stabilize it when I'm just trying to be minimal with my shooting. Oftentimes I'm holding a niece, a nephew, or a beer in my hand, and I don't really want to have to use both hands to shoot. The front side of the camera looks good. It's a classic Leica look. From the back side, it looks like a boring point and shoot, which I kind of noticed when I was vlogging. I kind of got an angle of me shooting one-handed and recording with the other, but it looks like a C-Lux or a Lumix point and shoot camera. It doesn't look like a Leica D-Lux or higher compact camera. It just looks like a boring one from the user side, but from the front side, obviously it looks, that black matte finish with the red dot looks really nice. So shooting with the D-Lux 3 is actually quite enjoyable. It's easy. I actually found myself using it in shutter priority. So with these smaller sensors, it's not really a big deal with the aperture unless you're specifically shooting a portrait or specifically shooting a landscape. I'm more concerned with the shutter speed, make sure that it's not too slow, or if I want to freeze motion, that I do freeze motion in that moment. So I'm just toggling up and down and just keeping an eye on the ISO, but not really too worried about the aperture. And I'm pretty pleased with how the photos came out. I don't think I missed any shots or any exposures really using it in that mode with, just having to think about the shutter speed and letting the camera figure out the aperture for me. The camera came with a 2GB SD card and I ended up using it. I thought it would be more than enough to just kind of get through this vlog, but I ended up shooting up to 88 photos and then I filled up the memory on the card, which I was actually pretty surprised. It's not terrible, but it is kind of annoying, 2GB, and you get 88 photos of how many photos you can get out of a 2GB SD on a 10 megapixel camera, but it's also only 16 photos shy of shooting 2 rolls of film or shooting 1 roll on the new Pentax 17 or 17. I don't know what they're calling it. It's that new film camera. Needed a little bit more memory, but not a big deal. Now when I shoot with these, I'll most likely use a 4GB SD or an 8GB SD so that I don't run into the same problem in the future. But I do get curious every now and then and start scrolling through the photos and deleting them from camera. So now going to the most annoying thing about the D-Lux 3 is its writing speed to the SD card. I was shooting RAW on it, which is great that the camera can shoot RAW, but it would take about 6 seconds to write photo into the SD and save it, which was a bit annoying. I even have this clip where I'll show it right now, where I'm taking a picture of that red Miata, I believe it is, and it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds to then write to the camera. And when you're shooting a moment, let's say street, it is a problem. Next photo that I show here, there's a BMW where I wanted to add a human into the photo to see if I'd like it more than the car alone, just kind of show that a little bit different side or a different perspective. But I shot a little bit too early in my first photo, and then it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the guy's past the car at that point. And then maybe I was a little slow on the trigger, but he's way too far in the front end of the car, and then he's kind of farther than I wanted in the back end of the car. And then that's just the reality of how long it takes to write to the SD. It's just annoying to me. I don't know if there's a burst mode. I didn't try a burst mode, and I don't always want to be in burst mode if there is, to not be able to like take a picture and then be ready to take it again. Example where it could be a problem is if you do a misfire, which we all kind of do sometimes when we're just trying to like half press or taking the camera out of your pocket or bag. You'll take a photo, but then you have to wait for it to write to the SD, and then you can take your shot. A major annoyance to me. And I did run into a D-Lux 2. It had the same issue. This is actually a D-Lux 4, and it's a little bit faster. It only takes about 4 seconds to write to the card. I know these are older cameras, but I'm not sure that the Lumix or the C-Lux 1 takes that long to write to the card. So I don't know what that is. I did try different SD cards, and I did try shooting in JPEG, and then it still takes a little bit longer, but not as long when you do JPEG. So if you don't care about shooting RAW, that is a workaround. But again, that is the most annoying thing about the D-Lux 3, which is why I actually ended up selling that one. Editing this video, I actually had to buy a D-Lux 4 because I was just like crazy to sell the camera. And I guess I sold the camera before I edited my photos and before I edited this video together. So it ended up inspiring me to buy the D-Lux 4. One major thing that did really surprise me about this camera, or how well it did shooting portrait. I know it's most likely due to the 16:9 ratio, and then us using our phones to take photos and doing videos in portrait, that we're kind of used to seeing the world in 16:9 ratio already, or at least portrait mode. And I found myself very comfortable or getting some really good results out of it, and actually making some, what is the word? Some diptych photography, which is kind of like what you get out of half frame cameras like the Pentax 1.7 or that Olympus pen, I believe, that you can do those diptych type photos where you have one photo and another photo that are either similar or relate to each other in a 35mm frame, which you can do it in edit, or you can do it back to back in the actual cameras. But it's just an interesting way of seeing the world. Not only was I doing it with 2 photos, but I was doing it with 3 on this camera, and I found that pretty interesting, how comfortable and how intrigued I really was about shooting in that way, which has definitely inspired me to maybe print out those 3 photos side by side, kind of put them on a wall and see how it looks. I think it'll look pretty cool. So stay tuned for another video where I maybe print those and share them with you guys and post them on my many blank white walls. The biggest selling point to this camera though is the CCD sensor. So these older cameras have CCD sensors, which is different from the CMOS sensors that most cameras have nowadays, which is most people know that already. I believe the CCD sensor gives us a closer look to film, and I'm specifically talking about the highlights and the halations that it makes. You can add grain or just kind of let them be that natural noise that these photos already have, but for the most part the photos look awesome. But the key thing and the awesome thing about the CCD sensor is that you get this look straight out of camera. I'll even show you guys a before my edit and then an edit after to show you how little my tweaks are, but those small tweaks perfect for my style of shooting, where I don't want to spend a lot of time editing, which is why I love shooting film. I just do small little tweaks and then move on to the next photo. I don't spend hours trying to make this photo perfect, but I love the look from just these small little edits instead of these like drastic presets that we buy or people sell to us. So yeah, I think that is a key highlight on these cameras, and it even goes to the D-Lux 1 and the D-Lux 5. But once you get to the D-Lux 6, it is a CMOS sensor, so you're gonna get a different look. I honestly haven't shot on it, but shooting with the Lumix LX2, the photos are not terrible in any way, but they're just very sharp and they don't have as much character as the CCD sensors, which is something that I feel like we're all kind of striving for in our edits. I feel like that's why even the Ricoh GR3X, they added that feature where they have the HDF filter, the high density filter, which promotes this halation looking thing. I'm always very surprised by the results. I was surprised about the D-Lux 1. I was surprised about the Lumix pocket camera that I have as well. But I'm very surprised about not only how usable these photos are, but how favorable they are. Like how much I like them, to the point where I do want to print them out. I do want to enlarge them and see how they look. I'm even really inspired to maybe use these in a photo book, even though I've never even done a photo book. Very surprising, but shocked about the quality that is coming out of these cameras, which is the exact reason why I ended up buying the D-Lux 4. A good price on this I've seen from $280 all the way to the higher end of $400, and that's on eBay. But if you like the results on this camera and you're not a Leica fanboy, then you can buy the Lumix LX2. And the Lumix LX2 sells on eBay for, I saw, from $100 all the way to $150. So you can save yourself a couple $100, and that ends up being the Leica D-Lux 3. That is, again, if you're not a Leica fanboy or a Leica fangirl like me, and you can just move on and care about the results. That is it for this video, guys. I hope you like this video. You can hit that like button for me. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Any questions, comments down below. And as always, guys, I forget to grab the camera. We're going to say happy shooting. Let me hit it with the flash. Happy shooting. Gang, gang. Now we edit, baby. Baby, I'm so self-conscious. I can never really afford a real Leica, so I take the opportunity to buy these mini Leicas, I guess. These Leica, these Lumix branded Leica cameras. Whatever. I just like the look. Who cares? It's my hobby. I'm a nerd.